I just don't know what to call this feeling. You'd just think that after 39 years on this planet, I'd have the word to describe what's going on inside of me. It's like I can see things that other people can't, and it makes me feel so alone. Dude.
Oh, don't give me that.
Excuse me?
You're seeing things. You don't know how to describe this feeling. This doesn't sound like familiar ground to you.
But I am.
You're talking about comic books again.
Nuh-uh.
You're talking about comic books again, and it's stifling your growth. You're undervaluing your own progress by giving in to...
That's it. That's the word I need. Undervalued.
Hey, now that's new. You're saying you feel undervalued. Let's explore this new feeling.
Okay, it's just that there are some comic books that should cost more, but because people undervalue them, you can still pick them up super cheap. Oh, that feels so good to get out. Oh man, Doc, thanks so much. You really... You get it, right? Hey everybody, it's Ricky from All Sorts of Words, and I was reached out to by my friend of the channel over on Still Only 35 Cents. I'll put his video in the description down here to talk about some undervalued comic books. Now, to really define an undervalued comic book, it needs to be something that I personally think, for one reason or another, should be way more expensive than it is, but is in fact kind of dirt cheap. The beauty of a challenge like this is it's all books I actually own, because to know that they're cheap, I kind of had to have saved money on them, right? So I'm going to be showing you 4 books from my own personal collection, and because I own them, I can also show you on the screen the exact amount that I actually paid. So let's get started. Book number 1. In 1939, the Montgomery Ward department store sent out a catalog to its prospective customers saying, here's what we have for the holiday season. And to kind of entice people to shop with them, they included in this catalog a separate children's book. They contracted one of their own copywriters, Robert May, to release a funny animal book for that holiday season, and he invented Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. We're so spoiled by the fact that this book is now a part of popular culture and the common vernacular and definitely associated with Christmas that we forget a human being sat down in a chair and wrote the damn thing. This is the first appearance of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer anywhere on planet Earth. No. So like 100 years from now in Japan, there will be images of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer everywhere. This is a book that is part of not only American culture, because we invented it, USA, USA, but because this is now globally owned. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is going to be on the spaceship that escapes this planet once it's just a burning ball of tar. And so the fact that you can actually find this book on eBay today is wild to me. So this is how much I paid for the book right here. Doesn't that seem criminally underrated for such a large part of human history? Well, I think so too. And so you can still find copies of this book floating around. Just make sure that you look at this particular image within the book. No one really knows why, but a first printing is defined by this image. It is a 3-propped plane. Santa Claus is flying through the sky and he almost hits it, right? The book went over so well that even the holiday season in which it came out in 1939, they immediately did a second printing. And they did another printing the next year and the next year, and that's how it stayed so popular. Well, every single printing beyond the first changed the 3-prop plane to a 4-prop plane. No one really knows why. We're thinking it has something to do with like the owner of the company wanting the book to be more modern. He was really hands-on with creative stuff like this. You can find copies of this book floating around for like 300 bucks. Look, I know I'm kind of tipping my hand in terms of like how well I have it financially by me calling $300 not that expensive, but we're talking about human history here, folks, and the fact that you can own a piece of it for that little, I find it astounding. Book number 2. In the 1950s, Prohías was an artist in Cuba, and he was like a political artist. He would do commentary, social stuff. He would appear in magazines mostly. Well, he did some unflattering portraits of the at the time leader of the Cuban Communist Party, Fidel Castro, and that is not something you ever want to do. So he took his family and he fled to the United States, where he applied for a job at Mad Magazine because they were hiring lots of different cartoonists. Their books were a hodgepodge of different types of art at the time. In issue 30 of Mad Magazine in 1961, Prohías' comic appeared for the first time. This is the first issue where you can see spy versus spy. Prohías later in life would kind of joke the fact that he fled his country for supposedly being a spy, and then he made his fortune drawing spies. This is how much I paid for my copy. You can still get this book for like high grade under $50 on eBay right now. People might know Spy vs. Spy from like their appearances on Mad TV, or even just the constant reprints that are still available to this day on Amazon. This is a big part of comic book culture, and it's never going to go away. So if you want to get in on the ground floor of something this important, you can on the cheap.
Editor Ricky here. I forgot to put in the intro for book number 3, so here it is. Book number 3.
One of my favorite things is telling someone who loves something, hey, did you know that got its start in comic books? There is a really big, long-standing, started in LucasArts and continues to this day, video game franchise called Sam and Max. They're comedy adventure games where you get to solve mysteries and just overall laugh your ass off at these two ridiculous characters. Sam, the straight-laced dog detective, and his ridiculous, insane partner, Max. They even, in the 90s, got a TV show on Fox that you can still watch to this day on YouTube. All the episodes are there, and I really recommend you do. I'm going to put the link in the description, because if you've got kids and you like laughing with your kids at the same thing, whereas like you get to enjoy the adult side of it, the kids don't pick up on it, and the kids get to enjoy the wacky cartoon side of it, Sam and Max, you can't do much better than that. But this big video game franchise got its humble beginnings in 1987 with Steve Purcell's Sam and Max. This is laugh out loud funny. But the great thing is, you only have to buy 2 books to have the entire Sam and Max canon. This is their first appearance here from Fish Wrap Productions. And there's one other issue, and then after that, it's all just trades reprinting those stories and adding some more conceptual art and stuff. But the majority of these 2 characters have existed in video games for about 30 years now. There's so many of them, all the way back in the LucasArts point-and-click adventures, all the way up to now. There's a pre-order going on literally today at Limited Run Games for the latest Sam and Max Save the World video game. This is what I paid for my copy, and you can still get copies of this on eBay for like under $100. It is a great franchise of characters that I feel is going to stand the test of time. Book number 4. And if you've stuck around this long, maybe like subscribe or something. I don't know. I wanted to throw in a book from Capes and Cowls, something that like is superhero based. I know I talk a lot about indie books in this channel, and that was no exception, but I wanted to touch on the DC universe and a major key that I feel is psychotically underrated. In the DC universe, there are only a handful of characters that are interdimensional threats. Like, if you think about it, when you've got Batman, the world's smartest detective, and you've got Superman, a literal Jesus allegory, what possible threats could make those guys sweat? Well, there is one, and his name is Darkseid. In Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen 134, we get the first cameo appearance of Darkseid. The next time we get his full first appearance is Forever People #1, also criminally undervalued. This is legitimately the DC Universe's biggest baddie. You think the Joker poses a intergalactic threat? No, he's just a crazy man. This is an actual pain god. He's a god of despair. Everyone's read that trope in comic books where like a big bad guy shows up and there's like maybe a B or C tier hero who goes, "I can handle this," and they definitely can't. This character, Darkseid, he does not play around to the point where if Nightwing is flipping in the city and he sees Darkseid, he has to call everyone. It is an interdimensional death god. You call everyone. Everyone? Everyone?
Bring me everyone. What do you mean, everyone?
His origins are ridiculous and have a big place in comic history too. When Jack Kirby was creating for Marvel and doing a lot of their art, towards the end of his tenure there, he was working on the Thor books. And he saw Thor as this opportunity to tell really wild stories about gods that have existed for millennia. What type of cultures would they have? What type of conflicts would you have among gods that never seem to actually kill each other? Well, he came up with some really weird stories, and Stan Lee and everybody else at Marvel was pushing back pretty hard, like, hey man, these are for kids, you can't really go off the rails. Thor is actually what broke Jack Kirby's relationship with Marvel, and so he effectively took his ball and went home. When he went over to DC, he decided to take all those extremely borderline psychotic ideas about gods and give them to the DC company that was willing to invest in them. And so there he created the new gods, a whole original mythos of wacky, crazy creatures. And the big baddie that he invented for that universe was Darkseid. To this day, Darkseid is the biggest threat in the DC universe, and he is so affordable. Like, let me geek out for a second just about Darkseid. This isn't Darkseid. This, also not Darkseid. This is a puppet that Darkseid, the interdimensional being, uses to maintain corporeal form in our dimension. This version of Darkseid exists across many different dimensions, all controlled by a kind of giant gas cloud creature that is, in fact, what Darkseid is. So when Darkseid gets killed, when you see this thing beaten up and bloody, it doesn't matter because this is just one of a billion puppets he has across many dimensions. So this is why Superman never really kind of holds back when he fights him. This is why Batman doesn't really hold back. And this is why it's kind of futile to kill him in the first place, because you're just going to get another puppet. Now you think after everything I told you, with his importance in the DC universe and how ridiculous and powerful he is, and how his creation is directly correlated to the history of Marvel and DC Comics, you'd think this would be a very expensive book, but it's not. This is what I paid for my copy, and you can still get raw copies today for like $100 to $150. Darkseid's not going anywhere, and I think it's safe to say he's going to be the main DC antagonist from now until the end of time. So now seems to be the moment to pick up your copy on the cheap. Okay, that's it. I'm going to be reaching out to some of my friends because I want to pass this challenge along. I think this is a great challenge because Undervalued It seems like we're talking about money in comic books, which is all we ever seem to be talking about in comic books. But Undervalued has a lot to do with the story. Why do you think historically or literarily these books should be worth more? It's impossible to not talk about those concepts without actually reading the books. So I'm going to be calling out some readers out there. I'm going to be passing this message along to Haul Yeah Comics, The Next Gen Collector, and Bruce from Up North Comics. All right, that's the video. Happy hunting. Love you. Bye.